Hi, everyone. Welcome to the OnPoint podcast. Today, I got to speak with Lori Long, Field Medical Excellence Lead at Sanofi. We discussed building a medical value story across teams, how to stay connected to field teams as a leader, and how to implement change. I'm really excited for you to hear this from my friend Lori Long. Welcome to OnPoint, the Medical Excellence podcast, where we talk to pharma leaders about how to build highly effective medical affairs organizations. All right, hi, and welcome to the OnPoint podcast. I'm Scott Thompson with Acceleration Point. I am so excited to have Lori Long from Sanofi joining us today. As I've had the opportunity to work with leaders in medical excellence, I find that there's some consistent aspirations they have around being catalysts in their organization. Nobody takes these jobs because they want something easy. They're looking to build champions for their work, to apply what it is that they're bringing to the organization to maximize the impact of medical affairs. And they're looking to do it in a way that scales so that they can take on additional challenges and continue to grow over time. And today we have Lori with us, who has successfully transitioned from leading a very strong field medical team in the U.S. at Sanofi to leading U.S. field medical excellence across 7 therapeutic areas. Her extensive experience has garnered her champions throughout the organization and now is really focused on scaling these initiatives across so many different teams. So, Lori, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to have you with us and to get to talk about this big move from leading one field medical team to having to take what you built and learned and apply it more broadly. So welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Lori, tell us just a little bit about your new role and who are you supporting and kind of what are the big responsibilities in your position?
Yeah, sure. So just a little bit of background. As you mentioned, Scott, I've been with Sanofi a really long time, and it's been 25 years. I can't even believe it's been that long, but always been in field medical, which I think is super important. So I started in the general medicines business unit on the diabetes side of the business, and then I transitioned over to specialty care. And as you mentioned, now working with field medical teams across specialty care, which includes 7 different therapeutic areas, 12 MSL teams, in addition to our medical value and outcomes, or our payer field team. So it's been quite the transition. I transitioned into this new role of field-based medical excellence lead in September of last year. So I say it's still kind of new, and it is a new role for Sanofi in the U.S. for specialty care. But in this role, I'm really looking to try to build some consistencies and efficiencies across the different field medical teams within specialty care. Harmonization was one of the key words for us, I think, throughout Sanofi. And it's quite a task, right? With the organization being so large, or just specialty care, one of the 3 business units within Sanofi being so large. So really trying to harmonize the different things that we do across the different therapeutic areas. Really look, as you mentioned, look for innovation, or there are different things that different teams doing that we can share best practices, look for things that might be innovative that we can do across all of the medical team.
Oh, that is amazing and such a big transition. Can't wait to dig into those. So you talked a lot there about how a lot of that role is to create harmony and consistency across the organization. Tell me what triggered, 25 years, there hasn't been this role. So why now? What's different that all of a sudden, say if you decide I need to have somebody responsible for doing this?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so I've recognized it just being with the organization for so long. I've recognized that we really needed a role like this. And in the general medicines business unit, really when I was there, it was only diabetes and cardiovascular, 2 teams under one MSL leader and head. So both teams did something very similarly. We reported the same way, et cetera. When I moved over to specialty care, that's when light bulb moment came for me that I'm like, my goodness, it's so large and everyone's doing something slightly different. So I realized that if there wasn't an SOP or a policy or a procedure outlining a certain process, the teams were doing their own thing. So then we had several different ways of doing different things. So I think it became recognized across the organization as we continued to get bigger. So when I went over to specialty care, it was in rare blood disorders, which was the newest therapeutic area at the time. So as we continued to grow within specialty care, I think well recognized that we need to talk more. We need to share these best practices and really align and make sure that we have our medical value story buttoned up and consistent across the teams. So I think there was just a light bulb moment for everyone saying, yeah, you know what? A position like this might be helpful. And we've had a global position previously, so we still do.
Mhm.
We have a global medical excellence team. But I think even their struggle at times was there was no unified or one person in the US that they could
Mhm.
come to because specialty care was so large.
Sure.
They'd get input from one therapeutic area or one person, yet it's not representation from all of the different areas. So I even think Global was like, yes, we need a UX point to work with that can be the unified voice of field medical at a global level. So
Great.
yeah, I think it was long recognized that this is an overdue position and something we definitely needed to create.
Fantastic. So there's a lot in there I want to unpack.
Uh-huh.
So let's start with you were leading a field medical team. You could kind of lead it the way you wanted to. You could experiment. You were doing things. And now you're in this role where one, it sounds like you're trying to share best practices that different teams have where they could choose to apply some of those, but you're also trying to drive some consistency. Can you just tell me a little bit about that balance between encouraging teams to experiment and explore and try things, but also trying to have consistency at the same time?
Yeah. And so I think it's super important, right, to not cookie cutter everything, right? So different teams have different needs. Dupixent is very different from our rare disease. So COPD versus CAT or ITP. Very, very different. However, if our foundation and our KPIs and some of the core things that we do every day are at least consistent or have a solid foundation,
Sure.
then you can really customize to the needs of your therapeutic area. And I think we found across the board that, yeah, something that might work in one therapeutic area, we can translate that to another therapeutic area. Is it going to look exactly the same? Maybe not. But yeah, we would never discourage you have to do it like this
Mm.
because we want to be so cookie cutter consistent. It's really, hey, this is the way we're doing it. And if it works for other folks, great. Let's try to build a process or support for it. Because I think that's where, even as a senior director myself, we would want to do things and we needed support because we're so busy doing our day jobs in our own therapeutic area that sometimes we just needed some extra support saying, okay, we want to do this really cool digital thing.
Yeah.
We just need help. So that's where I see and really think, okay, can I come in and connect the dots? Can I help support these field medical teams that are focused in what they need to do in their own therapeutic area,
Sure.
but come up with some of these innovative things that then we could scale across the organization or across to other teams. Again, it might look slightly different in every therapeutic area because they're all different, but the foundation and the
Yeah.
key elements to whatever we're building or whatever we're trying to do would remain intact.
What are some of those foundational principle things that you find require consistency?
Oh, so there's probably many, but I will say some of the things that we're working on is just our medical value story, right? Like things that we are looking at, our KPIs, our dashboard. How do we really show medical value? And I think just consistency in data entry and consistency in different dashboards. Here recently, every field team has had their own medical dashboard that leadership would go and look at and look at the activity of field medical. So what we're really trying to do is combine it into one dashboard to where 80% of the teams, the dashboard is similar,
Mm.
but 20% you can tweak towards your therapeutic area. But just consistent data entry, consistent dashboards so that when upper management or senior leadership looks and says, oh, what is field medical doing?
Sure.
They're not looking at 20 different dashboards and 10 different things and measuring them different ways. I think that's one thing. And then just policies and procedures. We're trying to move forward in more proactive activities that medical can do. So really just making sure we're all on the same page. We all operate under the same rules, guidelines, SOPs, the foundational things that each team can do is acceptable. So
Sure.
things like that are different areas that we're looking into.
Yeah, but it is interesting because as I've had a chance to work with field medical teams, both across Sanofi, but also across organizations, there's so much of an orientation of I'm different, I'm special, like what works for you won't work for me. And so I always feel like I'm starting from the beginning with every team, but it's amazing how similar they all end up.
Right. And I get it too, Scott. I get that we're special, we're different. And it might be true. Some teams might be different. However, I go back to we all operate under the same SOPs
Yeah.
and we're one Sanofi. So we have to work together and see if there's some sort of foundational excellence or
Yeah.
consistency that we can work across with teams.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? So that value story piece, what's exciting to me about some of the value story work and metrics and KPIs is that we can come to a common framework that says, here is how we think about communicating our impact. Here's the responsibilities or the tools that field medical has at their disposal, what they're allowed to do to help make that impact. But what you might do with a brand new asset that's going into market versus something that is later in lifestyle, you might balance those differently, but it's still from the same recipe book, right? It's still the same ingredients that you might be able to do. And I would love to hear what has been the reaction or the response from more of the senior leadership team as they start to see consistency?
Yeah, so I think it's overwhelmingly positive, right? And we're not quite there yet, right? We're getting there. So I think once we all really get there with all MSL teams, that it'll really be an aha moment of, oh, this is so much easier to look at field medical as a whole. So we still have work to do within Sanofi, but I think senior leadership truly understands the need for it, the need to consolidate and harmonize so that there is a single source of a dashboard or the field medical voice or value story that we can go and discuss. And you're absolutely right that it's different across different TAs and even within the same TA. If you have a product that's launching versus a product that's been on the market for 7 years versus one that's in the pipeline, and we see it across specialty care and teams working on it. So what you're going to look at or track, it could be slightly different depending on the life cycle of your product or where your product is. But I think if we're consistent across the teams of saying, okay, if you have a pipeline product, here's what's important. Here's how we need to really demonstrate our value as medical versus one that's just launching versus one that's been out in the market for 7+ years or whatnot.
That's great. So let's talk about some very tactical, practical advice. So you are working with 12 field teams across 7 TAs. And how do you practically understand where they all are, what everybody needs? How do you actually coordinate across such a broad organization?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely one that whenever I took this role, I thought, okay, I'm going to come in and do all these great things. And then I come in and I think, oh gosh, to wrap my arms around this organization and this many teams, it's a lot. But what I try to do is just stay connected, right? I stay connected to the field. I have regular meetings with the senior directors of all of the teams. So we have a senior director forum where we exchange just information that I have that's on things going on that I think they need to know about and then disseminate down to their teams. And then vice versa, right? So it's their chance to talk as the field leaders, as the senior field leaders amongst each other of, okay, here's what we're doing, or does anyone have this challenge, or just really a time to get together, share those best practices, look for areas that need improvement or those that are working really great, but really just staying connected to the field. I do that with the MSLs as well. So having an MSL advisory council where we have representation from every different TA, hugely important. So not only to maintain and understand from a leadership perspective what's going on, but from a field boots on the ground sales,
Great.
what do they see as some of their challenges? And I look at it as, how can I make their lives easier? Being in their place before and in their
Yeah.
role before, I know some of the challenges, and that's what intrigued me about this job is, okay, I'm a fixer. I want to come in
Right.
and try to help teams out. But really, with the Senior Leaders Forum or the Senior Field Medical Leaders Forum, NSL forums, I also try to stay connected to the field directors.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have trainers within each team as well. So the field trainers, trying to connect with them so that I can just uncover what areas are needed in terms of training or from all levels of the organization in the field. So I can't really tell you, Scott, like in detail for their products. I know generally where their products are and
Yeah.
where they are in their life cycle, but day-to-day data, no, right? I stay above TA
Sure.
on that aspect, but really just try to connect the dots above the therapeutic area level.
So as you're getting all these inputs, right? You have all of your council meetings, you meet with the director, you're probably getting emails, you're getting initiatives from global that they probably want you to help push. How do you organize and prioritize? I mean, do you have like notebooks? Like
Yep, write everything.
all
I
this
still
stuff.
have my handy dandy notebook, right? That I tried to do it on my iPad for a while and I was very successful. And then I thought, I'm going back to my old notebook and gonna ditch the app that my kids taught me to use on my iPad, taking notes there. But it's a lot of different projects and things that I'm involved with. We have several transformation initiatives within Sanofi as well that I'm involved with too. But it really is, Scott. It's just prioritizing as with every job.
Yeah.
I know everyone's busy, but what is the priority? And some of the things that I thought that I would do immediately coming into this role last year, I haven't gotten to do yet, right? So there's things I still want to do, a lot of things I still want to do, but other priorities such as transformation projects that I've been involved with have taken priority over some of the other things that I've wanted to do or thought I would do in my initial 30, 60, 90-day plan. But that's what it comes down to, is just prioritizing and keeping my good notes, keeping my SharePoint sites and Teams pages intact as well.
How do you personally approach these requests and these ideas and decide, is this something that we should put on a roadmap because we should all do it together? And we're going to do that in Q2 for whatever it is, versus say, hey, wow, multiple squares, that sounds fantastic. Here's some advice, here's some support, but go do it. And we're not going to lead it, you lead it.
Yep. So we do that. There's several different things that have popped up. So I think it's either if a therapeutic area like neurology comes to me and says, hey, we're thinking about this, we think it could be beneficial across all TA, and we already were planning it like X, Y, and Z. I'm like, go for it. Go pilot it, and then we'll roll it out to the rest of the organization if it comes out successful. And so that's what we've done in situations like that. And then there's some ideas that'll come to me that aren't as fully baked and say, hey, we are looking to do this in our therapeutic area. Do you think others would be interested? And I'm like, let's pitch it to them, right? Let's get on the senior field director calls and pitch it and see if everybody's interested, and then get volunteers from each therapeutic area so that we all have say, or every therapeutic has say into it. So we've done that as well. So it really just depends on how fully baked the idea is whenever it comes to me. But I think that's the one good thing about this role too. Previously, without this role, every team just did it, right? And didn't really share it with the others. And now they're thinking, okay, hey, here's what we want to do. Let's take it to Lori and see if we can do this across other therapeutic areas and get support that way.
Very cool. Could you maybe, you talk a little bit about this relationship with global transformation projects that are happening, and there's always this balance, especially when you're in the US where you might be further ahead of what they could do on a global scale. Tell me a little bit about that relationship between your function and what you're doing and the global teams that also do medical excellence. How do you collaborate? Where do you differ? Things like that.
Yeah, so we have a really good working relationship, right? So I knew them prior to taking this role. And the organization is so big, so sometimes they're not even involved in some of the transformation, the overall transformation project. But most of the time we are, right? Like it's a global US effort, US being the major stakeholder, I think, for them. However, we're probably the most well-developed as well and have our own processes, procedures, things like that. But I have regular calls with my global counterparts, right, to really reiterate some of the things that they're rolling out. If I know, okay, this is coming at a global level, really just making sure that the US is aware, prepared, and knows what to do with the information. And most of the time, we're seamless with global in the US. Sometimes things don't pertain to the US. I'll say, okay, this isn't us. This is the rest of the world for medical excellence. But really just having a great working relationship with them, that our global medical excellence team is key as well. And they're very helpful too. If there is like a digital project or something that we kind of get stuck on, but at a roadblock
Yeah.
and we need further assistance, Global's there to
Sure.
help. And I'll say, hey, are y'all thinking about this or can we partner on this? And vice versa with them as well.
Love it. What has been your biggest challenge transitioning from I am leading my team to achieve my objectives and go get the work done to now being in this role around medical excellence?
Just the number. So we've talked about a couple of them, right? Just the sheer number of teams that I'm trying to work with and really wrap my arms around. It's funny, I tell my husband, I'm like, there's never been a job before that I can't say, okay, I can wrap my arms around it. Let's go. Let's tackle it. We're going to get it done. This job, I'm still trying to wrap my arms around it, but we're such a large organization. And with the position not being new and not having to follow in anyone's footsteps, I'm still trying to build it. But that's probably the biggest challenge is just our size, right? So if we try to do things, we're trying to turn a large cruise ship versus a little towboat when we try to make change. It's a work in progress to do that. But I think that's probably the biggest challenge is really just the scale. And there's a lot of projects, right? Like I've listed off, we've talked about a few already. There could be like 5 of me and we would still have work to do. Again, this is a new position and just paving the way for it. So I think we've gone through we're going through medical transformations, new CLM, new CRM. So as soon as those projects die down, I'll be able to focus more on other things and time for other projects.
When I look at big, large organizational changes, right? I always think of medical excellence is the machine that builds the machine, right? You're the machine that's building the medical affairs capabilities and the medical affairs, and you've got processes, support capabilities. As you get larger, it requires more structure, more processes, more tools to help you do that. And I think that it would be helpful for people to know, like, what are some of the day in, day out, you couldn't live without it, processes, tools that you use to help build the medical affairs organization?
Wow. Probably our dashboards, honestly, and the people, right? I always go back to the people. I couldn't do it without everyone that I work with to know their story and really keep connected and represent them. So if I was out on an island by myself trying to do this job, I could never do it well, right? That's why I need all of the folks that I work with so that I can help field medical and help build the processes, procedures, and ship that's going to really sail and show the value. But it's really all the leaders and the field medical teams that I work with that are hugely important and valuable to have those great working relationships with those teams.
I love it. And one of the things that we've talked about before is that a lot of folks are attracted to the medical excellence role because it becomes a place where you can be a catalyst for change. But sometimes when you're causing change in an organization, you're pushing up against people's current comfort zone. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience and what have you seen as you've been trying to push change in an organization? And has your team experienced any inertia where they're like, we can't change. This is who we are. This is how we do it. And just maybe give an example of where you've had to push for that change to occur.
Yeah, sure. And I think back even to when I was a field director or a senior director for MSL teams, we all experience this, right? There's always change. They always say constant in the pharmaceutical industry, but change. And some change isn't always welcome at the beginning. But I think the most important thing is communication, right? What is being asked, right? So really explaining to the organization or to the teams I work with now, hey, here's what we're being asked to do. And here's the why. because
Hmm.
I think that is super important. If folks don't understand the why, then it's really hard for them to implement that change or to implement that what that we're trying to get them to do. And then I think my approach has always been, this is what we're being asked to do. Is this the best way or the best thing? I don't know, but this is what we're being asked. So we're going to try it, right? Let's do the best that we can to implement whatever the changes that they're asking, but take notes along the way, right? That's always been my motto. What worked? Great. We might see that, oh, this change is really fantastic and it rolled out smoothly. But there also might be okay, if we would do X, Y, and Z, it would even be more successful. So I think that's super important for teams that it's this way or my way or the highway. It's not, right? I've never been that type of leader. It's this is what we're being asked to do. Let's try it, but then let's offer up suggestions. If it doesn't quite work exactly like we want, what can we do better or what do we need in order to make this change or implement whatever it is more successful?
Got it. So let's say, I mean, you're starting off on this journey building out a medical excellence function, and your role is new. If you were going to look for a characteristic that you would hire into your role or somebody on your team someday, what would you be looking for? If somebody is in field medical today, as an example, and they want to move into this excellence role, how do you know if you're the right person to make that transition?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the first thing you just said is you're in a field medical role right now. I think that helped me tremendously is I know their world, right? I've been in field medical for 25 years. I've been an MSL, I've been a field director, I've been a second line leader as the senior director for an MSL team. So I get it, right? I get their challenges, I get some of their issues. And again, I'm a fixer, so I want to fix it, right? And I have a vision of field medical. And I so passionately believe in field medical that I want Sanofi to have the best field medical team in the industry. I want Sanofi to be the place that MSLs come to work and they stay. And they stay because of our people, because of our products. We have great products and because we develop them and we offer development programs or different job opportunities in order to help them with their career. So I think, first of all, back to your original question, is really just somebody who's in the field, who understands some of the challenges. And then I'd say things that have helped me trust, right? Are you a trusted partner? I think trust is key to really any relationship, but I think that is something that's truly helped me in my role as I knew some of the other senior directors and the field directors and MSLs across the different TAs.
Mhm.
So they trusted me to be the unified voice for field medical. And you have to be someone, again, who brings people together. Can you bring teams together? And as you mentioned, create consistency, but yet don't stifle innovation, right?
Sure.
Can you really do that for teams? And then I think if I was to expand in my role, where do I lack, right? Like the digital space, I've been around forever, but I can do so much more with the digital space. So then I think, okay, some folks that are really like think ahead in terms of the digital aspect in this world that we're moving into now, I think it's hugely important as well.
Yeah. Well, let's tackle that a little bit deeper. I think about, especially if you're successful, your medical teams you support are going to become more and more capable year over year over year. Right? They're going to become more digitally savvy. They're going to have more strategic orientation to the value story. They're going to have a more unified voice, and they're going to continue to get better. In order for medical excellence to remain their guide and to be their trusted source of improvement, you'll have to be getting better twice as fast as they are, right? Or else they'll catch up and you'll be like, oh, I don't know. So what are you focusing on personally? What's your development? What do you want to learn more about in this role?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's really, I think, as I mentioned, just the digital space. I think I could definitely grow in the digital space with AI and just where to move forward. I think our whole organization really can. We are want to be the leading pharma company in AI. So really just using some of our, Gen AI tools a little bit more and really develop in that area is something I definitely look to do.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Lori, it has been such a cool transition. It sounds like in your first year, you've got a lot of the foundations put together. You're still getting people kind of now focused on what is the long-term vision? Are we all going to be heading towards the same destination? And then we can get into all the initiatives around how to get us there. What a cool story. What a cool transition. I'm so glad that you were able to join me on the podcast. I think that your story will both be educational, but also inspirational for a lot of folks making this transition.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me, Scott.